Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I've directed my second scary storyteller channel for y'all. And this one's Mr. Haunted, and the video that I picked out to watch is 3 creepy, unexplainable hiking horror stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
This story took place when I was 26 years old. I'll try my very best to explain the story from my point of view in much detail as possible, as this happened a long time ago.
Okay.
It was the middle of springtime, and I just recently gotten a new girlfriend after I broke up with my previous one. She was, to say the least, completely messed up. I won't go into a whole story about what had happened, but let's just say that she was really abusive and was too involved with drugs and alcohol. I wouldn't mind having a drink once in a while, but she was on another level of an alcoholic.
Well, I'm glad you broke up with her, because if someone acts like they like to drink and take drugs a lot, don't hang out with them anymore. Just dump them. But I'm glad you found somebody else that was the total opposite of her. But anyway, let's continue with the story, see what happens next, shall we?
Needless to say, we had a very unstable and unhealthy relationship and decided that it was time to go our separate ways. Anyways, my new girlfriend was far more better. She had the same interests as me and was more understanding to certain things. One thing in particular we both enjoyed doing was going on long walks and hikes. We lived in Colorado at the time and lived right next to a forest preserve about 5 minutes from our house. We'd take long hikes there and would sometimes take our dog on walks when we wanted to. The preserve went on for miles and was well over 100 acres, which was perfect for hiking. However, I remember this one time where we went on a hike where we found something we never expected to find. My girlfriend and I were going on a day hike, as we never had really been on that big of a hike. We normally go on hikes that lasted for about a few hours, but this was our first time doing a day hike. We chose level 3 as the level of difficulty for the hike, as we never had done it before and figured we were ready for it.
I mean, you want to keep challenging yourself to hike longer and get more exercise? I don't see no problem with that. But you just got to make sure you don't overtire yourself or don't get lost.
For those of you who don't know what levels are for hiking, it's basically how easy or hard you want the hike to be. Beginner levels were just normal hikes, and expert levels had rocky terrain and steep hills. Once we were on the trail, we prepared ourselves for the long trip ahead. We had our flashlights for when it got dark out and brought a bunch of food and plenty of water for the hike. It started off as a nice walk down the trail, but about 20 minutes into the hike, the ground got steeper and more rocky. In fact, it got so difficult that I had to help my girlfriend up after she kept tripping on rocks. Like I said, we had never done this level of difficulty before, so we didn't know what to expect. There was a watchtower up on top of the mountain deep into the woods where you could go see the skyline of Denver and take pictures or whatever. The tower was there meant for people to take a break and get some fresh air. We were far from the tower and sunset was just starting. We'd been hiking for over 5 hours at this point, and all we could think about doing was getting there to have a rest break. Fast forward 15 minutes later, we were still hiking when my girlfriend and I noticed a huge open field with very tall grass. We didn't know if we were allowed to go there and figured that it could have been private property, but seeing as no one was around, we took that chance to check it out. Thankfully, there was a path through the field, and at that point, we figured that it was for hikers. We went through it while getting hit in the face by these very tall, thin pieces of grass, which we assumed was pampas grass. Eventually, we came out of the field, and that was when we saw a very old house we were sure had been abandoned for years. I turned to my girlfriend and said, "Look, babe, this is obviously private property, and I don't want to risk us being arrested."
Oh my god, you're so sensitive sometimes. Can we just take a look? It would look so cute for pictures.
My girlfriend was very interested in spooky or scary things, and I didn't want to argue with her.
First of all, I like Mr. Haunted's female voiceover right there. I didn't expect that to show up in this video. But if she's into the spooky stuff, just please her by walking in there with her and take photos, just so she will not just dump you right down the spot. It seems like you got a good one and you don't want to lose her because you don't want to do what she does. But just be careful. You never know if that place might be haunted or somebody else may be hiding in that place.
Looking back, I must admit that it was pretty cool in some ways. We agreed that we'd take a look inside for a few minutes and then take a few pictures and leave. Needless to say, we went inside and my girlfriend started taking pictures of inside the house. There was still a good amount of sunlight left, so it was much easier to see inside. After my girlfriend was done taking pictures, I told her that we had to leave, and we did just that. We walked out of the field and back onto the main trail, wondering as to why the property hadn't been blocked off if it was for hikers to explore. We had finished the hike about 3 hours later that day and got home and went to bed.
Yeah, I was just thinking that myself. You would think that if people are going on a hike, this area would have been blocked off saying no trespassing, don't walk on property or something like that. But apparently whoever owned it just don't care. They just leave that place sitting there vacant. They'll be mad if people started trespassing and tearing up the place more than it already is. I mean, I would be.
The next day, my girlfriend and I were going through the photos we had took of inside the house and eventually came across one picture that caught our eye. The picture was of what I assumed to be the living room. However, I noticed something very strange in the picture. It was a bit dark and distorted, but we could make it out to be that of a person. Upon further inspection, we identified them as being a very old woman with what looked like a white dress. She was not a pleasant-looking woman, but rather very unsettling. There was something about her grin she was giving off that really freaked us out. The scary part is that we never saw a woman in that room, and considering the fact that there was plenty of light, we would have seen her if there was someone. We don't go down that trail anymore, and we now stick with the normal paths. My girlfriend ended up reporting it to the ranger, but nothing ever became of it.
Oh yeah, that would be creepy just to see an old woman behind you guys in your photo. I guarantee you it was not a real live woman. It was probably a dead woman. And that house used to be hers, and she saw you two were trespassing. And of course, if you report it to the rangers, what are they going to do? They go inside and don't see nothing, they just pass it off. It's like they were probably seeing things. But I'm glad that that woman's spirit did not follow them home and terrorize them, and they're okay, and decided to stay on the natural trail from now on. So let's get to story number 2.
A few years ago, my dad and I went on a weekend trip up to northeast Georgia to do some hiking and do some hunting. We've been to most states throughout the East Coast, but never been on this part of Georgia before, which is why we tried it out, to hopefully find a new favorite spot for these kinds of activities. I was only 16 at the time of the story, and I had learned all the rules and the proper use of firearms and how to use them responsibly from my dad, who had been handling guns for years.
Okay.
We were only going for the weekend, so we didn't pack as much food or water, just some clothes and various bathroom utilities. We rented out a cabin at an affordable price of $60 a night, which was fair enough. The cabin was nice, but it was nothing too special. It was just a plain modern cabin. The day after we had arrived, my dad and I got packed up to go on our hiking/hunting trip.
Well, a slightly modern cabin would be perfect for me because I don't care about any high-end cabins with like all the technological features in it. At least you got a good spot to rent out to not only enjoy the hiking with your dad but also hunting. I figured that would be nice to get a cabin to use as your hunting lodge. You leave there, go in the woods, kill your animal, and then bring it back to field dress it basically. Instead of going to your truck to do it and then drive a long ways home.
My dad brought his gun, which was a heavy high-tech hunting rifle, while I just got a simple one. We began the hike, hoping to find some deer wandering around, but we knew that there was a slim chance of that, as it wasn't deer season, and that if there were deer, that they would run off due to hearing us coming. Chances were that we'd only be able to hunt elk, but that wasn't our main goal at the moment. However, we kept walking when my dad stops me and tells me to look at something he was pointing at. Hey, do you see that over there? At first, I didn't know what he was pointing at, but as he pointed a bit more, I was able to see what he was pointing at. About maybe 15 to 20 feet away from us was what looked to be a backpack with clothes on the ground, along with 2 hiking sticks. It was rare to come across something like this deep into the woods, but my dad said that it could be something serious. My dad told me to stay behind him and not to go in front of him for any reason. We walked over to the scene, and it turns out that we were right. There were actually two backpacks, not just one. However, the clothes were scattered all over the ground. What was even more strange was that some of the clothes had been torn through. My dad then found what looked to be a GoPro on the ground, which still thankfully had battery. We were hoping the GoPro would give us at least some sort of explanation as to what went on. We looked through the photos and found pictures of a couple. Then we went to the most recent video, and the thumbnail was a part of the forest, right where we were standing basically.
Holy crap. Why am I getting the feeling that the father and son found a bunch of clothes and a GoPro, stumbled across a kill scene? Because I guarantee you that this couple probably came across a bear and they got attacked by it and ate to death. Or might be a cryptid involved out there. After seeing that, I'll be calling in the park rangers so they can do an investigation.
It showed the couple hiking through this part of the forest when all of a sudden the girlfriend screamed at something, followed by the boyfriend screaming as well, and eventually the screen turned black. The sounds of both their screams will forever be burned into my mind. My dad took the GoPro and, of course, reported it to the authorities. As far as we know, within a few hours, there were search dogs, detectives, and search helicopters looking for the couple, but as far as we know, they were never found. The thing that still freaks me out is to how they were all of a sudden gone, and what made them scream, and how they met their fate. That still crosses my mind whenever I think about it.
You and me both, because I would like to know what happened. A lot of theories pop into mind. Like I said earlier, a bear came across them and decided to attack him. B, they might have ran into like a cryptid like a Bigfoot or Dogman or something and they were torn up and killed and eaten by them. Or C, a creepy serial killer might have been in the woods stalking them and then started chasing after him and got him. But then might as well label him as a psychopath since he ripped up their clothes too. But where they are now, I don't know. Probably killed him and buried him for what we know so far. But I hope park rangers do discover them. But if they're dead, that'd be really disturbing. I'm just glad that they didn't run into who or whatever did this, because then they would have been the next victims and would not be found ever again.
In late 2014, my parents had signed me up for the Boy Scouts as I had shown interest in it for years. I liked it as I loved camping, as well as hiking, and the Boy Scouts also had some benefits that taught what to do if you were in a life or death situation.
I'm glad that you took interest in hiking and camping and stuff, and your parents signed you up to the Boy Scouts, because they can teach you about like survival in the woods and how to camp and fish and some other stuff involved with wilderness. But I wouldn't go to them now because all the allegations about them in the news. But anyway, let's continue, shall we?
I made a few friends during my time in the Scouts, but there was this one friend that I really made a great connection with. His name was Blake, and we're still friends till this day. Blake had recently joined the Scouts as well, and joined for similar reasons like mine. We'd be tent buddies for every camp out, and he'd always be the person I'd talk to. I would talk to other people, but it would mostly be Blake. One time, our troop took a trip up to North Carolina for a huge hiking trip. Our troop referred to it as the Barefoot Mailman, which is basically a hike that would take at least 2 days in the middle of the woods, which meant that we had to camp for a night. Anyways, we had begun our hike, and as night came, we had to find a good camping spot to stay the night. We eventually ended up coming across a small clearing deep into the woods. The troop was sure that there were better spots, but we only had about an hour before it got dark, so we really didn't have a choice. It took our troop approximately 20 minutes to set up camp, and we did so just in time. Our scoutmasters and leaders informed us young scouts that lights would be out by 9 p.m., as we had to wake up early tomorrow and continue the hike. Eventually, the time came where we had to go to bed, and I fell asleep almost instantly, as I am somewhat of a heavy sleeper. However, I was awoke to a noise outside my tent. I was still in a groggy state, but I adjusted my ears to hear better, and it sounded as if someone or something were walking out there on the rocks. One would normally assume that it was a deer or even a black bear, but I had this weird feeling that it wasn't either of those things. I was not going to look outside to find out, so I went to sleep. The sound of the trumpet woke us up in the morning, and my friend and I got up and got ready to continue the hike. We, of course, had to carry our tents in the backpacks, which only added on more weight. At one point in the hike, we had stopped for a rest break to drink water and relax and pretty much do whatever.
Well, I'm glad I did not join the Boy Scouts because I wouldn't like it if I had to carry my tent wrapped up in my backpack. But let's just see what these boys discover while they started hiking and going to a place to get some water.
I had to use the bathroom, but I couldn't go alone as the scout leaders were very strict about the whole buddy system thing. Therefore, my friend had to go with me and waited for me while I went behind a tree. That's when I noticed my friend looking at something past me. I turned around to see a very tall man, maybe about 6'5", looking at us. He wore a torn navy blue shirt and some ripped jeans. You might as well say he was homeless. The thing I remember most vividly about him was his long gray hair and the look on his face. It was pretty much a blank look. I then noticed that he was hiding something behind his back that he didn't want us to see or know about. I waved at him, trying to let him know that we were leaving, but he showed no signs of acknowledging the fact that I did anything. He just stayed there staring at us as we walked away.
He probably is homeless, but I guarantee you he's mentally disturbed in the head. I wouldn't even wave at him. Run back to your scout leaders, tell them what you saw before this guy decides to bolt out of there or charge at one of you kids.
Nothing has happened ever since then, but I know for a fact that he was planning on doing something to me that wasn't good. I still have no idea as to what he was hiding behind his back.
Well, believe me, you don't need to worry about what he was hiding behind his back. He probably had a knife and probably wanted to delete you from this earth real quick. But since you guys left and went back with your group, it didn't fall through with his. But I would have still told the scoutmaster, would have made everybody on high alert or called park rangers to let them know that guy was in the area. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Mr. Haunted related content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. That's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.